So, can a surveillance camera be hacked? And how can you do that? Now, in order to do that, we need to first understand what a surveillance camera is. So, I'm going to draw one on a house. So, this is the house, basically. And let's just imagine this is the very thin roof. That's the roof. So, right here on the wall, we have a surveillance camera sitting. There we go, that's a camera. And for some reason, either it can be connected to your Wi-Fi adapter at home, which is this one. I'm gonna call it an AP, just like that. Alright, so what is and how can you hack that piece? Can that piece be hacked, right? That is the question. So let's write it down and answer the question. Can it be hacked? Well, yes. In the video. That's it. Well, yes, you can. Let's assume that it's connected to the Wi-Fi. So there's a Wi-Fi connection to the access point right here, and basically the camera is an IoT device. That's an IoT device. So there are different things to think about now. IoT devices are notoriously known to be insecure. So they can be no encryption, interface without password. When I say no encryption, I mean HTTPS, so it's just HTTP. So maybe I should run no HTTPS. And there can also be some firmware issues and so on. Now, first of all, we need to understand that if you bought a security camera, that camera here will of course have some sort of, version, some software running, firmware, and so on. Now, all that is something you can acquire just by either looking at the device and guessing, searching, or you can, if you can go up to the house and inspect it on close hold, or take a picture of it, and maybe do some image search on Google or whatever search engine you can use these days to do image searches, then you can find the particular camera. Most cameras tend to change design, and that is something that is also a security issue, because when you change the design of something, it also ships with a version, and that version can be identified just by pure eyesight. So we really need to focus on the fact that we need to acquire these things right here. That's a really good idea. If we can get those, then the person owning this camera could be in a world of insecurities. Now, other things you can do that doesn't involve attacking the actual part of the software on the camera. So, of course, if let's say it's the version itself is a bad version, you just send an exploit to the camera. But you're going to be aware of something, that the camera is going to be connected to the Wi-Fi network. In order to exploit that particular version, you need to get access to that access point. So the version, the software, and the firmware, the software firmware is the same kind of thing, but people like to divide it sometimes, so I'm going to do that too. You need access to the Wi-Fi. So all this require that you have access. Let me just make it different. All this require that you have a direct access to this access point. Then you go to the other part here, where you got the more sketchy things like no encryption or HTTPS. Now, if you know encryption or HTTPS, that basically means that the traffic in the air, which is going to be communicated, just like when you draw it in all directions, this is the all direction icon, we can intercept that. And if it's a Wi-Fi camera, which most of them are, because doing cable work around the house and stuff like that is something that most people don't want to bother with. But it is the most secure thing to do cable work, because it kind of means that if you have cable pulled around the house for this camera, then it doesn't really matter too much. Well, not the same way, at least, if it's not encrypted or anything. But in this particular case, it's Wi-Fi, and if it's not encrypted, you can just intercept the traffic with any kind of, you know, Wi-Fi adapter. I have one right here. I'm gonna show it to you. This is my Amazon Alpha card. Yes, just there you have it. It's an old one, but it still works. It does the job right, and basically, that would be enough to intercept the traffic. You can just do that by booting up Wireshark, or you can do any. I would probably recommend you to do Wireshark at the first part. And then you're going to detect the IP address or the MAC address of the device, and just filter on it, and then read all the traffic. So that is the point here. Let's make it yellow, orange. I mean, interface without a password. Now, again, that would require you to get access to the camera itself, so it would still require you to have this connection to the access point. The reason for that is basically if you need to access the camera itself, you need a direct access to the internet or the network or the home network that the camera is connected to. Firmware issues, yes, so that actually depends. So if, let's say that this camera do have an antenna, right? This is the antenna, right? Now let's assume that you can broadcast a signal to this kind of camera, and you know its IP address and the MAC address, for example. So you got full, you know, information on it. Then, in theory, it would be possible to broadcast a direct signal where you spoof the IP address, if that is something it checks for, of course, of the access point, sending a direct signal to the camera, asking to do something, because it is basically just an air thing. All this is also requiring, you know, that we have no encryption, because it would be quite difficult to guess all the commands. It's kind of an advanced thing, so I would say in a dotted line we need connection to the AP, maybe not. Now the question is, and the most common question would be then, hacking a something on Wi-Fi is all about the device that is connected to the AP, and also all about the AP itself. Now, if the password for this, how strong is that password? How strong is the password on the AP? Now, that's going to be the question. So if the password is weak, all of this would be much easier just to gain access to the access point, and then basically just accessing directly to the camera, because the camera will have an IP and you can just sniff that. When you have access and you're sitting inside this access point, all the traffic going back and forth to it, you can sniff it basically. You can also use the internet connection for your own purpose. You can use it as a hacking hub, you know, a gateway, whatever you call it. And I would say, so if the password was weak, you can basically get access to it by just, you know, brute forcing, doing some handshake, you know, deauthentication attack on the IoT. So deauthentication attack is an attack where you send some wireless packages to the IoT devices connected. So in this particular case, it's the wireless, you know, camera. And the deauthentication package will basically just say, hey, camera, you're not connecting to me anymore. And the me part is the access point. So basically you're telling the camera to reconnect to the access point. While you're listening to in the air for connection packages, you can capture the handshake, which contains the encrypted password, if there is any password at all. Sometimes there's also no password. Sometimes the default passwords, and so on and so on. So this video is getting to the part where I'm going to end it. I just wanted to do a follow-up on the video on my surveillance camera video about technology, and this is just the overall security in mind video about, you know, cameras, IoT devices, and access points. So I really hope you learned something. I want to see you again online at some point. So have a really nice day and take care.